Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gillcast. You're either listening to this on the Sports Grid Fantasy Football Podcast or the RotoGrinders Fantasy Football Podcast feed. I'm Davis Maddock. I am joined by Nate Noling and Sammy Reed here, just begging. I just sent an email to the official stats provider of the NFL, seeing if there's anything we can do to get Rico Dowdle's touchdown changed over to Tony Pollard. If they could go ahead and do that, good slate. Nothing really to complain about other than my own obvious stupidity. Why did I not learn about Josh Kelly, guys? I mean, what about last
not
week
good at football?
What about last week led me to believe we all left last week going out? Kelly, he stinks. AJ Dillon, he stinks. I learned my lesson with AJ Dillon. Didn't play AJ Dillon this week. Aaron Jones. What's the deal? It's the deal?
It is time to admit, you and me, Davis, because we played Josh Kelly again. We don't know ball.
No, I did two things that were like zero ball knowledge this week that I'm just gonna have to eat L's on.
And the worst part for the listeners is Nate is taking no L's. Like 0 L's from Nate Noling. I mean, there's
a huge L he needs to take, and he's gonna be like, "No, dude, you don't understand. When you look at the Whopper, like
there will be one L I'll take, but
this may be a first. Maybe a first in the history of this program.
It's a tiny one.
It's not a tiny one. It's a huge one, but it doesn't matter because you 1v1 the entire field on defense and won by 32 points. Spoiler alert, when you get 33 points from your defense, pretty hard to not win when you get 33 points from your defense. But you did do one extreme ball knowledge thing. We'll talk about that here in a second. Nate scored 211.24 points in DraftKings.com cash games. Whirling Dervish. If you want to send Sammy games, it's Whirling Dervish. I bet you get no invites, Sammy. I bet you get literally no invites. Huh?
I mean, after people see that I played Josh Kelly 2 weeks in a row, they're going to be people are going to be like Googling how to spell Whirling Dervish so that they can send me invites.
So Sammy, you scored 161.78. I scored 160.38. What did we have that was even? Oh, it was literally just I played Ford and you played Madison. So that was, the only difference there.
I mean, I can take a 0 from my defense and I could take negative 15 from my defense and I'm still up on you guys.
Well, can you mute him, Davis? Can we just mute Nate for the rest of the program?
He 1v1'd us. He 1v1'd us Keenan Allen versus Tony Pollard and won by 30 points on that. Which to be honest, I actually think even before, 11:59 a.m. Central Time, I think Nate was right, and I think we were wrong. Not because Pollard is a bad play or because his usage is questionable in any way. I mean, you could, Sammy, I'm sure you and I are sitting looking at this game, just tilting our goddamn faces off, and Pollard still totally got completely fine. Better than any season of Jonathan Taylor usage ever, right? I mean, he's had 20 carries in every game. He's had 4 or 5 targets in every game. But anyways, this is the team that Nate played. Kirk Cousins, Alexander Mattison, Zach Moss, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jaden Reed instead of Tank Dell, Zach Ertz, Tony Pollard, and the Bills defense. So that's not the team that most people played, though. You would have been very unique in most contests playing that game. The team that most people played was Kirk Cousins, Alexander Mattison, Zach Moss, Christian Kirk, Justin Jefferson, Mike Williams, Durham Smythe. Then who was the flex play in that line? Oh, Kelly. Kelly was the flex play in that lineup. And then the New York Jets defense. What I did versus that big train was I played Tony Pollard and Tank Dell over Alexander Mattison and Christian Kirk.
Yeah, that's so much better.
I felt incredibly good about that. And in fact, I think this team would have had a chance to win anyways, because everyone other than Kelly scored really well. But I played the Commanders defense, which was the second most owned defense. The Jets defense was the number one most owned defense, but the third most owned defense in DraftKings NFL DFS cash games was the Buffalo Bills. And they scored 33 points and dunked on anyone who did not play them. Honestly, I feel completely fine about the Zach Moss fade. In fact, I feel really good about that relative to seeing.
Do you?
I think
you feel good about Josh Kelly over Zach Moss.
I think that structurally the right thing to do was to play Tank Dell. I think that playing the more balanced lineup where you had, what was it, 4 guys between 5 and 6K, I think that was the wrong structure to use. Now, there, I'll just read my team out. This was the team I played. Played Kirk Cousins, Josh Kelly, Jerome Ford, Justin Jefferson, Mike Williams, Tank Dell, Dalton Kincaid, Tony Pollard, and the Commanders defense. So I feel really good about not playing Zach Ertz, and I feel really good about not playing Durham Smythe. I just played a shit bum in their spot, right? And Kincaid had their first 2 catches of the game. They ran a screen to him, and then he got a catch on the second play, and I was like, I'm going to smoke these losers. All these people played Durham Smythe. I pulled up Durham Smythe's game logs before the game started, and he's been in the NFL since 2018. He's never topped 60 yards. He has never scored multiple touchdowns in a game. I was like, I'm not losing to Durham Smythe teams. I want a chance to give the blade. I did not think that the Jets were such an unimpeachable play that I absolutely had to have them. I thought the Bills were fine. My lineup didn't have this. I couldn't find a good salary permutation to get to the Bills. Obviously, that was stupid. But, the commies versus the Jets would have been fine. And it even would have been fine if the Bills got like 12, but the Bills got 33. The things that I feel bad about, I mean, Kincaid was, how Levitan does his must plays and his want plays? Kincaid, definitely a want play. Definitely nowhere in the neighborhood of a must play, and it structurally put me into a bad spot where I played Ford instead of Moss, which, to be honest, incredibly lucky for Jerome Ford to get 18.9 draft.
Extremely lucky.
Through
the first quarter, it looked like he wasn't going to get more than 5 carries.
Yeah, they had at one point in the first quarter, they had 5 different players who had a rush, and none of them were Jerome Ford.
Yeah, it looked like the whole game plan was basically to substitute the Nick Chubb rushing game for like Elijah Moore schemed touches. That basically
correct,
like
and it was time. They felt it was time to let Watson cook.
Yeah, and even when
Zach Moss was the polar opposite. Zach Moss,
yes.
Yeah. So I don't understand how you could say you feel good about fading the value.
I guess I didn't view the gap in. Obviously, in hindsight, I was wrong about Jerome Ford's role. I thought he would have more. And it's not like he didn't get any touches. I think he got 11 rushes and 5 targets, which is not great. I guess pre-lock.
Yeah, not great, bro. Not great when Zach Moss had 30 carries and 3 targets, and including a Randy Moss.
Oh my God. Moss's touchdown was sick. Yeah.
Bro, he mossed somebody, and he is Moss, and he just absolutely smashed. I mean, my issue is playing Kelly over him. And I actually didn't have the $100, but that's I don't think I would have anyways. And frankly, it just take away my card. I mean, what the shit am I doing? Josh Kelly is a no talent ass clown. And I knew it after last week, and I admonished myself after last week, and then I looked at the projections again this week, and what a value!
Oh, no, number one value play. You got to play him.
I mean, fire me into the goddamn sun. I don't know ball. Throw me out of here. Get somebody else on the Gillcast. I can't do this anymore. I'm so bad, so bad. Josh, I'm the DFS version of Josh Kelly.
It's really terrible. That is the one. I don't feel bad about playing Ford because in my thought on him was that maybe he siphons off some of the low value touches, the early down rushing stuff, like the schemed Elijah Moore stuff, but that he would have a role in the passing game. Obviously, I did not anticipate 2 receiving touchdowns like that. That was not my projection for him. And I mean, clearly I was a little bit wrong on Moss's role too. I thought it would be unlikely for him to run back every single running back touch, and he more or less did. The fade I felt really good about was Madison. I thought I kind of put Madison and Kelly in the same bucket of just being like, Madison is also a no talent dust ball. And I mean, that's like a real, like, if you played Madison, you're like, he just ran bad. You know, he should have done X, Y, and Z. And then if you didn't play Madison, you're like, motherfucker fumbled. He got stonewalled a bunch, but he also was wide open for a receiving touchdown, and Kirk just missed him. So clearly, I think process-wise, the right grouping of guys was Madison, Moss, and Ford. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least Nate, we binked that Madison over 11.5 carries on Prize Picks, baby. I mean, easy game. He got 20. Easy game.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Running back was really, really difficult this week. This was like, obviously it was a winning week for me, but it was like one of the tougher weeks of cash I've had in a long time. This morning there were so many running backs that I thought
there was a lot of
I was
plays.
This close to playing Mostert. I thought Mostert was a great play.
Yeah.
I think I had Mostert until like 11:30, and then I swapped.
How tilted would you have been watching A-Chain just run nuts in the first quarter? And been like, you would have been like, oh, well, I'm never gonna get there now.
But like, I legit thought there were like 6 running backs that someone could flop versus me that I would have been okay with. I
think Pollard, Madison, Kelly, Moss, and Ford. I think all were.
But that makes the Kelly play worse because literally everybody worked out except Kelly.
Yeah, it makes
Kelly had 11 rushes for 12 yards.
There's literally no defending it. Like, the Kelly play is like, it's terrible. Like, I'm bad. If like I was making fun of people last week for playing bad, like when I play bad, I gotta own it. Playing Kelly this week was terrible, and we all should have known better, and it was just awful. So Nate's team scored 211.24 points. You played Kirk Cousins. We all played Cousins. Madison, Moss, Mike Williams, who we all played as well. Jaden Reed, no ball knowledge, but what you did know was you knew ball, and you played Keenan Allen, who basically had the Brandon Marshall game. I mean, unreal, Nate. Great stuff.
Unreal. I mean,
Nate just 1v1s. Both Tyreek and Justin Jefferson go ham, and it doesn't matter because Keenan Allen wastes them both without getting in the zone. Like, that is ball knowledge, I gotta say.
He did get in the zone. He threw a touchdown. Only 14% owned in the massive.
He threw a touchdown to Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Which you got to play for that in the cash games when you can get your wide receiver to throw it to your other wide receiver. Yeah, I mean, obviously the Keenan run out was great. It was a tough swap, but I overall felt the balance builds and cash were the right way to go. I think the only way that people who played bad this week were the people who paid up for Tyreek and Jefferson and didn't go balanced. There were some lineups that people were putting out
playing one of them or
you've lost your brain, Nate. What are you talking about?
There were people who played both. Both
is bad. Both is bad. One of
I think the balanced lineup. I think the balanced lineup gives you access to way more ceiling than these like stars and scrubs when people try to do that. And I understand with Tank and Reed that there were 2 playable guys, but I just think the floor that you take on when you do that is just not worth it. So all right, now I think that was like the worst lineup build I saw.
Eat your small amount of shit for not respecting our short king Tank Dell. Just the people need it. Just come on.
Yeah, Tank Dell was the play. I mean, I was looking at Tank, Craycraft, or Reed. Landed on Reed again.
The Craycraft slappies, I played him a little bit in tournaments, but the Craycraft slappies, I mean, come on. Tank Dell was staring everyone in the face.
Okay, to be fair about the Craycraft thing, he did get hurt and like left first quarter. Like, I mean, you have no idea.
He wasn't going to go 5-45-1 though. Like, let's be honest.
Well, he might have gone 5-45-1, but he wasn't going to go. What did Tank end up getting? I mean, he got the 100-yard bonus. Tank went.
Honestly, Tank is more of a me play, and Reed is more of a you play.
145-1.
Yeah,
Tank. That's Tank.
Because Reed is a legit baller. Reed makes plays. Reed gets separation. Reed is
Tank does too. Tank's a
volume guy. Where Reed is like a legit
He almost had 2 50-yard plus touchdowns in this game. He got tackled on the one. I mean, it was like a jump ball and they just ended on the 1 yard line instead of in the end zone. But then the other one, he created a bunch of space and beat everyone to the end zone. Tank is legit.
Yeah, it was bad. I should have played Tank over Reed. I should have. I mean, I felt bad about that.
I played with the double punt lineup with Reed and with Tank to try and do the Justin Jefferson.
I think
Tyreek
it's objectively bad.
But the reason why I decided it was bad was I expected there to be like 87 total plays run in Saints Packers. That's not what ended up happening. It ended up getting a little bit more high volume, but like those are just two teams that want to, I mean, not that there were that many passes. Like the Saints threw 35 and I guess the Packers got to 44. Reed's still like 7 targets. He saw fewer than Musgrave. By the way, Musgrave is just gonna every week. Musgrave's gonna be like, he's running all the routes, he's getting all the targets, and it's. I mean, I guess he outscored the tight ends that everyone played in cash this week, which is hilarious.
Yeah, you were smart to not play Durham Smythe. Durham Smythe was not a great play.
It was smart.
Whatever,
it was
bro.
smart. It was smart in a player takeaway. But structurally, it led me down a bad path because it got me off of the Bills defense. But it got you a 1v1 with like 6 points of leverage versus the chalkiest train in double ups. The chalkiest train in double ups was your team with Smythe and Jets.
Smythe and Jets. So
yeah, I mean, I think like, so we talk about this a lot, that like the cheap tight end, like a lot of the times you just eat that. But I don't think you eat it when you like literally cannot get buried by them. The Dolphins scored 70 points and Durham Smythe got 1 reception. Like Durham Smythe was never, ever ending you. Now, Ertz.
What are you talking about, dude? Tyreek Hill had like 2 targets after half. Like their running backs ended up going off. How can you say, a tight end on a team that scored 70 points is a bad play? Like, stop this.
He's a lineman. He is never going to, his career high in targets is 6. He's never, I mean, I guess he could score twice. It's 7 and he did it last week. Or week 1 or whatever it was. Like, yeah, dude, he had 7. In his 2 games this year, he had 7 targets and 3 targets. I'm not buying that Durham Smythe can bury me. He's been in the NFL since 2018. His career best game, you're right, 7 targets last week. His career best game is 5 for 59. I'm not buying. I'm not that. Now, Ertz, I think, could have buried me just via volume. And honestly, I was clearly not playing Ertz because I played Kincaid, but got a little bit lucky there in the sense that the Cardinals got up instead of getting boat race in that game. But if it was like the Commanders game where they were down the entire time,
Ertz almost scored too. They did like a little shovel pass to him, and he just like old man fell when somebody tripped him instead of plunging into the zone. I'm pretty sure Durham Smythe would have scored on that play, by the way.
I think Ertz was, I don't know, the clear.
He was fine.
Like from a cash game standpoint, like you take that volume. It didn't work out here, but like I don't care how old and dusty he is. Like take that volume at tight end.
I think that playing Kincaid over Ertz is way worse than playing Kincaid over Smythe.
Well, the thing is, there's $600 different. Like that's the issue.
But my lineup specifically created that leverage.
Yeah. I should say my lineup because we haven't said it yet. I played Cousins and Madison. So Madison was not very owned. He projected really well. He was only about 8% owned. And I mean, in retrospect, like, he didn't score and he didn't get the bonus. So it's kind of like he didn't smash, but he got 20 carries and 5 catches. I mean, that's pretty good value. I think his run out was a little bit poor. Could have had a much better game. So I played those guys. I played Josh Kelly because my brain has no grooves in it whatsoever. I played Tyreek Hill at the big receiver spot, and if
we should talk about that a little bit because Tyreek was projected for more points than Justin Jefferson by every projection site, but Jefferson was 66% owned and Tyreek was 22% owned. That's pretty interesting.
That was really shocking to me because I told you guys, I thought it was Tyreek all day. And then when I saw double up ownership, I was like, wait, what? Like, why was Jefferson so high owned?
Because this was the game. Everybody just wanted this game environment.
It was the game.
And people played Cousins. So they wanted to, they're like, I got Cousins. I want to have Jefferson. That's why people did it.
See, to me, it's the exact opposite. Because I had Cousins, I knew I was getting exposure to anything Jefferson does. We're not having anything in that Miami game. When Tyreek goes off for 160 and 3, I would have been hosed. Like if I would have. So I think
in this situation, I don't think it matters because everybody's playing Cousins. Right. I mean, what was Cousins owned? He was 67% owned. Everyone's playing Cousins. So it's really like exposure or not. Like this isn't like a 10% owned, quarterback. I mean, everybody's playing this guy in cash. So it really is just Tyreek versus Jefferson.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's situations where this is important, but in a slate where the quarterback is so owned like this, I don't think it matters.
I ultimately sided with the mid IQ logic of I have Kirk. Kirk is never. I went at the other perspective than Nate, which is that if I'm playing Kirk at what was he 70% owned, he is getting there 0% of the time, not bringing Justin Jefferson along with him. So if I'm already saying that I'm dead if Cousins doesn't get there, like I'm especially in head-to-heads, I'm dead.
But you're not. But you're not dead because everyone's playing Cousins.
Well, I'm like these days, the double ups are honestly too good. I'm about 80% of my volume in head-to-heads. I accept every invite. I'm like lurking the lobbies a little bit. I'm still playing the double ups, but I think they are, because of the train stuff, they're just less profitable than they used to be. So
at this point, I've almost considered rolling out a different lineup in double ups than I do in my head-to-heads. I'm almost considering like, what do I think the train's going to be and how do I get some leverage off this train? Because the trains are now 5% of the field. And it really comes down to whether or not you're going to beat the train or not. Where head-to-head, it's a totally different ballgame.
Like for me, like I was like looking at it, I was going through games and it was like, if I got the Pollard touchdown that I needed, I was going to pass 2 huge trains, but without it, I was like stone dead, right? Like just like, it was so, I mean, it's so frustrating to be. And also, it's very frustrating to know if I literally just played any other breathing human being other than Josh Kelly, it would have been fine. You're on mute. You're on mute, Sammy.
Literally the worst play on the slate. I mean, literally the worst play on the slate. I mean, we played him 2 weeks in a row in cash. We spent a bunch of fab on him in the pentathlon and started him over Kenneth Walker last week when Walker scored 2 touchdowns. By the way, didn't make the same mistake.
By the way, the Chargers play the Raiders at home next week.
Oh, we got. Are we martingaling?
Hopefully, Eckler's
back. It sounds like this Eckler thing is not resolved. He didn't get in any practices this week.
No, he's gonna be out through the bye. Like,
yeah, when they asked Staley about it, they were like, "Oh yeah, he's working hard to get back in a couple weeks." Like, it does not sound. Not sound.
And I think Mike Williams is dead also.
Oh yeah.
His knee is. Yeah, he's dead.
R.I.P. my seasonal teams. GG's.
I wonder what Quentin Johnston is going to cost next week. Okay, so I'll just to summarize here, I got to eat a couple L's. The Kincaid want play, like even if in a vacuum, I think fading Durham Smythe and Ertz on a long enough timeline is plus EV. It just wasn't like a great spot to do it with Kincaid. And what ended up happening, I think, in the game was that they actually went back to the Deontay Hardy stuff that sort of was what I thought they were going to do all year. Like I thought Kincaid was this like terrible pick in seasonal and that Hardy in round 18 was the way to play it. Hardy ends up playing a bunch more. I think he got like 7 touches in this game and they went away from Kincaid. But ultimately, I mean, obviously the right way to play tight end was Laporta at 4,000. I mean, the dude absolutely smashed.
Yeah, right.
But that's in a total. No one landed on Laporta at cash.
Correct. I mean, I think the best players with the best, tools and projections and simulations, they probably played Kirk, Madison, Moss. Probably the best players had Kelly, I would guess, instead of Ford. But Ford, I think, was the better play. And then they would have had Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Tyreek Hill, Durham Smythe, and the Jets defense. I think is ultimately, and I don't even know if that team won. I think it probably did.
Well, that's almost what I had. Almost. So I had Cousins, Madison, Kelly, and Pollard. And then I played Tyreek, Mike Williams, Tank, Dell. So I didn't play Kirk. And then I played the Durham Smythe because, you know.
Yeah, I thought Kirk was a lock. I thought Kirk and Williams were both locks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, I think, you know, you can parse all this shit between Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill, but you know, it's you're kind of flipping coins. Like their projection was essentially even. Tyreek's was a little bit higher. Certainly with Waddle out, it's like, okay, like he's going to alpha it a little bit more. Probably better game environment on the other side. And
I actually want to take that back. I think that Tank was a lock. I actually do think that Tank was a lock. I mean, to get that type of role on DraftKings where like you're expecting the Texans to throw like 40 or more passes in that script, and which is funnily enough, not even what ended up happening because they beat the Jaguars, which totally fucked us in Survivor. Like, yeah, so
at least Dallas lost too. So we got a couple there.
But Stroud threw 30 times and Tank led the team in targets. And I also like my prior on him is that I think he's good. And I think he fits in a role that is like very useful for DraftKings cash. So I think Tank was a lock.
I think it was optional. I think Kirk was a very good play. I just thought that Dell was good. Like Dell's our short king, and he is good. And you know, like you, I thought Stroud was going to have to throw a lot, and they'd be down. And you know that allowed me to get up to somebody like Pollard, who I just thought was a nut play. And even though he only scored 18 points, man, I mean, his role, he's essentially the number 2 running.
Yeah, we all jammed Pollard in. We all made mistakes getting Pollard into our lineup. Like I think all of us.
It's not a mistake, man.
We made mistakes because of the Pollard decision.
Yes.
Like I don't think one of the 3.8, 3.6. I don't think Reed or
Dell
was the right play. I think both of those were probably mistakes, but both of those, I think balanced would have been better. I think going up, like I think having Kirk being your cheapest wide receiver was probably the right build. But I
don't. Maybe you definitely think of things from a median perspective, and in cash, you kind of want to come at it from that way. But the one player in that whole hodgepodge that is going to absolutely break the slate is Tony Pollard, right? Like he can be the breaker.
Pollard has the same ceiling as Tyreek or Justin Jefferson in a one game.
Absolutely. And even in this game, I mean, 23 rushes, 3 targets. It's
like it's easy to look at 18 points versus the Cardinals and be like, Pollard sucks. What did you think you were going to get? And then you're like, well, if he just happened to be on the field during that screenplay that Dowdle got, he gets what, 27, while like the Cowboys just suck the whole game. And you're like 18 points in a floor game. I don't think people realize how nuts that is. Like Bijan got like 9 and 9.5 in a floor game today, and he's the same price as Pollard. Like 18 points in a floor game is insane. That's I mean, it's not quite CMC levels, but it's very, very high.
Getting close, man. It's getting close.
And I don't know, I mean, something that it's not going to be a popular take on the internet, but maybe Pollard is really one of these guys that loses too much efficiency when you give him the ball that much, and it actually will turn out that he was much better in his prior. Like, I don't want to go there yet, just because it's been 3 kind of. I mean, every Cowboys game has been weird in one way or another, right?
Well, what do you mean? Because he didn't like break off a super long touchdown or something?
Yes, because the thing that he used to own was he'd have these insane splash plays, and maybe he's heavier. Maybe he gained some weight, maybe he changed his off-season training or whatever, and he's just not as capable, or maybe it's just 3 weird games that the Cowboys have played. And
I mean, you're always going to lose some level of efficiency the more the volume goes up. That's
I mean, bro, 2 out of the 3 games he's averaged more than 5 yards a carry. Like the one game where he was inefficient was last week versus the Jets.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying that. Clearly, like I played him, I thought he was awesome. But just like Tony Pollard leads the NFL in expected points right now, or at least he did coming into the week. I don't have access to the updated stuff. He'll probably lead the NFL in expected points again after week. Well, Tyreek will probably lead in expected. Well, I don't know. But he's also like, he was -12 under expectation. heading into this week, and he'll be more under expectation again after this week because he had a bunch of carries in close that he didn't get in the zone.
Yeah. Pollard's a boss. He's the number 2 running back in fantasy. Like, let's not overthink it.
I jammed in CMC last week. This week it was jamming in him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just am looking at these 3K wide receivers going like, I don't know. Their floor scares me. But yeah, I mean, Tank, I shouldn't have played Reed.
Okay, Nate, you're actually going to lead the GBPs this week because you played a
let's keep Nate last, man. He's got the hammer.
Okay, all right. So I played the double spy this week because I thought this week was exploitable because the ownership in the Chargers Minnesota game was going to get out of control. I got one part of that right. I did get one part. The ownership in that game was completely absurd. These are some of the ownerships from the team that won. Mike Williams was 30% owned. Tank Dell was 30% owned. Kenneth Walker was 20% owned, which I thought was a bit strange in a week with so many running backs to choose from. Not that I don't like Kenneth Walker, but I liked Kenneth Walker's like a way better play when he's 9% owned than when he's chalky, just because of how he gets there, which is these explosive runs. And maybe that's not even true. Maybe Kenneth Walker is actually ascending a tier in the running back hierarchy.
I think he is. I think he is. I think he's getting up there.
Once you see the Kenneth Walker air yardage numbers, you'll be like,
did you guys see that deep catch? I mean,
yeah, the wheel route. Yeah, bro.
I thought he was Metcalf out there. I couldn't believe it.
If that passing work continues, he's right there with Pollard. I mean, it's
so and then
easy, bud. Easy with that.
So Kirk was 25% owned in the double spy. Kelly was 40%. Jefferson was 43%. So I'm like, okay, this is a bit of an exploitable spot, right? It's got to be. No, it wasn't, because what did I do? I think I've literally done this for my high stakes entry every week. I played a 5% owned Lamar Jackson. Good, right? He got 32 points. Like, oh, we're vibing. Mark Andrews, also 6% owned. Not so good. Jerome Ford, 10% owned. Good. Browns defense, 3% owned. Good. All of it was good. I did play Jefferson and Kelly in this lineup because when you play a stack that is sub 10% owned, I think you give yourself that leeway. What a dumb, stupid fish I am for playing Josh Kelly. Like, just what
Jesus
an absolute
Christ. Yeah,
moron.
bro.
What an absolute moron. I played Josh Downs as my bring back on this team. I loved his role in this game with Minshew. He was my pivot off of the Tank Dell, Jaden Reed stuff in a lot of tournaments. Was very happy with the role. He got 9 targets, maybe 10, but just, he didn't score. So whatever. I played Jahmyr Gibbs in this lineup at 15%. He was my most owned running back play of the day in tournaments. He got all the work. But the passing game work wasn't there, I guess, really just because they were ahead the entire time. They only threw the ball to 4 players in this game. So, I feel completely fine about that. I don't feel fine about this. 8% owned River Crackcraft. Gonna give myself the old F-1 on that. I mean, I should have just literally played anyone else. Like, just play another tight end, do something. Like, it's just, I mean, that's terrible. Like, because I thought Crackcraft would be less owned than Berrios, and that's not what ended up happening. I read that. Yeah, wrong.
He got steamed.
I guess the touts must have been on Crackcraft over Berrios, because I had played Berrios and some other stuff and he was less owned. This lineup obviously did not cash. I still, like, if any given week I'm going to be able to get Lamar at 5% and Andrews at 5%, like, I'm probably just going to keep doing this. I don't know. Am I playing bad? Like, it just feels like that stack at 5% owned, especially when there's like more than enough value to go around. Like, it's not like I was playing guys with like a 2 target median projection to get there. Like, these guys were like all.
No, I don't think you played bad.
I don't think so. I think it's a great stack
in tournaments this week because LA did what it did and Tyreek did what he did.
Yeah, I was never gonna win. Like when that game goes off that way, and maybe that's playing bad. Like, this is the other thing with all these sims. Like, our friend Drew Dinkmeyer like shipped everything today. Wiggins got second in one of the big contests on FanDuel, and these guys are using the sims that ETR is running now and using the stuff over at the solver, and they loaded up on that game, right? Like, they're loading up on that stuff. And I guess it's one of those things. Brian Hooper says this to me all the time when we talk about this stuff, which is that, sort of our gut instinct, our ball knowing brains is like, oh, you just can't play into that level of ownership. It's just bad to play a 25% owned quarterback. It's bad to play a 40% owned wide receiver with another 30% owned wide receiver. But if the Sims are saying the field actually is playing this inefficiently and they should be playing into it more, and basically, at what I am doing is guessing, right? Like I'm just being a keyboard clicking monkey saying, oh, it gets so good. Look at these ownership percentages, and then going to fucking hit the deposit button again while other people are playing like the Giga Chalk stuff because the computers are saying it's actually not Giga Chalk enough.
Well, here's a question for both of you. I mean, I haven't messed around with Sims yet, and it's like, dude, how much are you losing here? This kind of feels like the next iteration. It's almost like poker, right? Where the solvers kind of started spitting out optimal frequencies for plays, and then you can be exploitative off those, right? Once you understand kind of what the baseline is.
You have to understand the contests you're playing in very well to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two things. You need to have incredible ownership projections, because any sim is based on ownership projections. And if your ownership projections are off, your sim results are going to be
that's just like poker. You need to run the proper solves. You have to have a good idea of ranges.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would say there are some really good ownership projections out there that get pretty dang close. And using that, you can actually sim out and see that, like, oh yeah, even though LA is the chalk stack, like, it's not owned enough. And maybe the field will sharpen up, and then a year from now, we're actually talking about how those chalk plays need to be faded again. But right now, I do actually think that, like, there's value in not fading that chalk, where I think 2 years ago, we all just had these rules of like, oh, 40% owned wide receiver, exclude, optimize,
right.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the, on the IQ meme, it's on the left side. So.
Yeah. I guess I think I just maybe need to be a little bit more serious about digging into the salt, like into the Sims for the slates, because like the process that has served me well for a long time, I did not have a top 5 finish in the SPY or the red zone last year. And I'd had one every year for multiple years heading into that. And then obviously the same has been true this year. And, on one hand, like that means like it's been like 30 something slates. So like, who knows? But my guess is that I'm not doing anything approximating like a very efficient plus EV play at this point. And so I want to try and play a little bit differently, even if in the end, what I decide is I think it's exploitative to play Mahomes and Kelsey when they're both 5%, or Lamar and Andrews when they're both 5%, because that gives you access to unique ceilings. I mean, paying up a tight end this year is just going to continue to be insanely unique, because Jefferson and Tyreek are going to garner so much ownership on the slates they play, and you can't really play an expensive tight end with them. But I need to think more deeply about that. Sammy, let's go. What do you got?
All right. I actually, it's been a weird weekend around the Reed household, so I actually didn't reg in time to get into the SPY. Like, it was gone by last night, which I was like, oh snap. So I threw this team in the $150 power sweep. I felt really good about the team. I did stack the Minnesota and Chargers game, but I did it in kind of a unique-ish way.
You played Jordan Addison?
No, I played Osborne.
Oh, he got a touchdown.
Yeah, well, no, that's about all he did. I went Herbert and Mike Williams, and then brought it back with Osborne, and I used a running back. So I used a 3 running back build, which is pretty unique in and of itself. I think about 2/3 of tournament lineups tend to use receivers in the flex these days. Did Travis Etienne. He was 19%. My gold star GPP play of the week, Gus Edwards, empty 51 rushing yards. Great job, Sammy. I'll bet the Sims.
To be fair to you, he did get injured.
Yeah, well, I'll bet.
He was one of my favorite tournament plays too, Sammy.
I spent all week arguing with Liam and Kyle Dvorak from Roto World about who we were going to start in our main event league, Gus Edwards versus Jaylen Warren. And I got a pretty good feeling Jaylen Warren, I don't know right now, the game's just starting, but I got a pretty good feeling Warren's going to beat him.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gus Edwards did get over 48.5 rushing yards, which won me some money on Prize Picks. Thank you, Gus Edwards. And then I played Bijan in the flex, RIP.
How owned was Bijan?
He was 13.5%.
See, that is shocking to me because I figured that he would be completely unowned because Pollard would just be so popular.
Yeah, that was my idea is being contrarian both by playing 3 running backs, but then also playing Bijan instead of Pollard. Turns out Bijan just didn't get it done. He had like 60 total yards. At receiver, like I said, I played Big Mike and KJ Osborne. I also played Nico Collins and Sam Laporta. So Collins was kind of like a guy that was correlated with ETN. Obviously, if Jacksonville's ahead, super reasonable assumption. RIP. You know, they're going to be throwing it. And I thought Tank Dell would be really popular. So I thought going back to Nico, who's had a pretty insane role so far this year, was a pretty good idea. Didn't work out. I did do the Laporta and Bijan little correlation there. Laporta kicked Bijan's ass. Unfortunately, that was a good play, but Bijan didn't get it done. And then I played the Saints DST in a defense, and I thought that was a really good play. I didn't think they would be widely owned. They were only 2.6%, but you know, in a spot where the Packers were really beat up, right? No Watson. I think one of their linemen, Bakhtiari, I think it was out. You know, they were in a heap of trouble. And I actually thought it was a really good spot for the Saints defense. They did well. They got 10 points, but this team only scored 141. And in a slate where just a super high scoring slate wasn't even close to good enough. So frankly, I thought it was a pretty well thought out lineup, but you know, we bricked. Didn't get rich.
You know, I don't hate it. I do think one thing that I do this a lot, but playing the chalk game in a different way, I actually think maybe that's dead because because the guys on these offenses it's just too concentrated. I mean, I don't
know. Gerald Everett got 2 touchdowns. Raheem Mostert, Devon
Parham got 2 touchdowns.
Parham got 2 touchdowns. I mean, so that
the Mostert A-chain stuff, I think you put that in a total alien realm, honestly. Like that is just so far from anything that is projectable or repeatable. I don't know. Maybe I'm taking the wrong lesson. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I do. It sort of feels like you are like leveling yourself, you know, to be like, oh, I'm gonna play KJ Osborne instead of Justin Jefferson. Like with the Chargers,
I don't know.
With the Chargers, maybe it makes more sense because they have more random dudes who score touchdowns. And the Dolphins thing is different too because Waddle wasn't playing. I don't know, but I think maybe that might be dead because really what you're saying is I need a guy with an 11% target share to just run hotter than the motherfucking sun while still being kind of owned, right? Like what was KJ Osborne owned? Like 12%?
He was 8%.
That's probably fine.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, crazy enough, by the way, Justin Herbert, I mean, I know it's tournaments, but Herbert only 7%.
Because everyone just played Cousins. Literally, like Cousins was like a quarter of the pool. Everyone just played him instead.
Yeah.
All right, Nate. We buried the lead. You had a good team. You had a real sweat.
Had a sweat, but unfortunately the Bears couldn't do anything, and Chiefs only played like 3 quarters, so didn't amount to a whole ton. But did end up let's see, it was like I think 5th in this small spy that I played. So I went with a Herbert team, and the way I decided to play this game a little bit different was just to do a total onslaught. So I went Herbert, Kelly, Keenan, plus Mike Williams with I did decide to do a Madison bring back on this. And I just thought, I mean, smaller field. And I think this game was so clear and above every other game on the slate that instead of trying to pick and choose ownership, I just was like, I'll just play it differently and onslaught it. So Herbert came in way lower owned than expected. He was like 8.3% in this field. Keenan Allen was 15%. Mike Williams and Kelly obviously carried a ton of ownership. They were both nearly 40. Madison with like 15% on the bring back. But yeah, overall onslaughts like that, I do think when you combine all the ownership in that way, you're going to get a little bit different, even though it was a chalky game. And then I filled it out with Jaden Reed, Tank Dell, Bills D, and then Travis Kelce, who I played in like almost every tournament lineup I had this week.
God, the people out there need to drop what they're doing and find somebody that loves them as much as Nate loves Jaden Reed. This is a true romance story, man. This is really great. I love to see this for you.
Jaden Reed's a stud. Like I can't get over Jaden Reed, but I need to for the sake of my bankroll. But I mean, the fact that I got 5th and Josh Kelly, like all game, I'm just like sitting there going, get me something, get me something, get me something.
Yeah, get me literally anything.
No. I mean, I can't.
And you just play Tank Dell and you bink.
I just can't believe I played Josh Kelly in tournaments. I mean, it was just.
Yeah,
but I did play around.
Both are just like so.
I did play around with The Sims this week, and there were 2 things that I found interesting. And one was it did challenge my thesis of like you got to have a bring back. There were a lot of Sims that I was looking at with just Mahomes and Kelce and no bring back in Chicago. And every time I would try to jam in a Chicago bring back, it would lower expected value. And so I was looking at a couple different things. And yeah, I think it was who's the founder of Run the Sims had an interesting Twitter thread this week about testing that thesis of the bring back.
Yeah, I saw that. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, and so I kind of played around with that a little bit. And so most of my lineups this week, I didn't actually have a bring back. Just trying out some different stuff. And I had a couple other tournament teams that cashed as well. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, The Sims, I do think changes it because it takes your thesis and actually plays it against a true field versus just kind of these, I think we think in very binary outcomes and very like, oh, you fade this, you do this, you don't do this, you do this. And I think every slate's a little bit different. Every time, every field is going to be a little bit different. And I think there's no way for us as humans to like fully comprehend that without
Yeah. I really need to get into this, man. Cause like, I mean, just going off on a tangent, but my poker game really changed when I started getting into solver work. And it just kind of like illuminated some like important concepts that I really wasn't incorporating. You know what I mean? Like, just for example, like if you 3-bet and you flop bottom pair, like say you 3-bet with something like ace 5 suited, right? And it comes like king, queen 5. Like it wants you to blast the hell off, right? Because you just have like bottom pair, so you block bottom set. Your range like is such that you have kings and ace king and pocket queens and the other person doesn't. So it doesn't even matter what you have. Like you can just barrel shove and just like win so much. And that wasn't a concept that I was necessarily using, but it wants you to have bottom pair specifically in that spot. And I think when you start playing around with these sims like you are, Nate, and it starts illuminating new concepts that you just aren't really aware of, it doesn't mean that you need to follow the sim exactly, but really it's going to teach you some huge things about the player pool and just these things like you're talking about. Like we've thought we needed to bring back for years, and we've seen teams win with bringbacks. So we're like, oh snap, like that's the way to do it.
But teams are winning with bringbacks because they're doing it, because good players are doing it too. That's right. Like the other thing, you know, it's like, maybe it's not actually in a true everyone playing. Like the other thing is that solvers to some degree are assuming that you can play optimally, right? You know, that like your 150 set is playing optimally. You know, and that kind of brings in a whole other, I mean, this stuff goes so many levels deep of thinking through like what optimal actually means, and then what does the knowledge of optimal optimality, that can't be right.
Work on it for next week.
Work on it. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that my takeaway is that each slate is different. They're like, I used to have these very raw, rigid rules of like, okay, 2 and 1, bring back 2 stack. Okay, don't play double tight end ever in the flex because that just, but every slate's going to be different. And I think looking at that and just having a much more robust set of principles instead of just having these very raw rules is going to be kind of the future of tournaments. And I think it's going to change each slate. But But we're 3 weeks in. So what do we know? We'll be talking like totally differently in a year. But I love that the game is evolving and we're finding different things and finding different avenues.
No, I don't love that it's evolving so much. I actually would prefer to, people just like playing running backs in the flex all the time and like the best plays. Like not being like I actually, Nate, I think you're wrong.
No, you got to adapt your game.
I don't like that, man. I really like 2018, 2019, those like that. I mean, that's not even really
when people used to be playing their cash lineups in these single entries thinking that was like, no.
Yeah, but people wouldn't play like David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell at like 7,800. It's those were the good days, man.
Those are the good old days, Davis.
What's funny is I was just thinking about this. Like we have to have been doing this for almost a decade now. This not playing like this actual show. Because I was thinking about this. I'm married to my wife. We met 8 years ago. And when we met, I was already doing this. So that was 8 years ago. So it's got to be pretty close that we've been doing this for a decade.
God damn! Like, guys, how does this happen?
This is sad.
What are we doing with our lives?
I thought we'd fucking get out of this town, man. But we're still here. We are still
grinding away at these $25 double ups.
Oh, that is a great note to end the program. If you want to send games to the guys who played Josh Kelly in cash this week, you can send them to Davis Maddock on DraftKings and Whirling Dervish on DraftKings. You can try and find Nate, and you're not going to find him. He's not going to be able to get, like, you can dig. Nate is lost in the matrix there. You can do your best, and we will be back next week. Later, everyone.